Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jesse Carbonda, the Executive Director of the Hoosier Environmental Council. I want to welcome you to our Northwest Indiana virtual solar workshop. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors and our event organizer for this workshop. Our sponsors include South Shore Clean Cities of Northern Indiana, the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, Indiana University's Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, Valparaiso University Office of Sustainability, and the Hoosier Environmental Council. I want to give a special thanks to Amanda Shepard, our Senior Manager of Outreach, who's responsible for the organizing of this workshop, with special support from Michelle Jones, our Outreach Associate. We're going to dive in right now to talking about the agenda for our Lunch and Learn today. We'll begin with a presentation by Mark Van Dongen. He'll be talking about solar technology, funding, and project development. He'll be followed by Zach Schock to talk about solar incentives, as well as solar battery systems. After Zach, we'll have a presentation from Lori Cagle to talk about solar energy and electric vehicles. She'll be followed by me, and I'll be talking about how do we make solar more accessible in Northwest Indiana and across Indiana. And our final presentation will be by Amanda Shepard about how you can talk to lawmakers about solar energy in the run-up to the 2021 legislative session. And then I'll finally wrap up with a couple of minutes of our planned follow-up with all of our attendees. So we're really grateful for all of you to take the time to listen in on this workshop. A couple of logistical points. One is that we welcome your questions and we ask you to place your questions in the general chat. In other words, don't direct it at an individual, put it in the general chat so that others can benefit from the questions you're asking and not ask redundant questions. Most of the questions will be answered in the Q&A portion of this workshop, which will be at about 1 p.m. Central Time. We will have about 5 minutes after the presentation of our first presenter to field questions specifically for Mark. Your camera and your phone will both be muted. I should say your sound will be muted throughout the duration of this workshop. And finally, if you are having some kind of technical issue, please send a private chat message to Amanda Shepard, our Senior Manager of Outreach, so she can try to help you. With that, I will welcome our next presenter, which again is Mark Van Dongen. He is the President of Midwest Wind and Solar. And so, Mark, if you can go ahead and share your screen, and Amanda will turn on your camera and unmute you.
Thank you very much, Jesse. I am opening my screen. So give it a second here as I'm taking over your screen. If you can confirm, Jesse, that is on right now.
It is on, Mark, yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Jesse, for giving me the opportunity to participate in this workshop. Gonna try to give a 15-minute overview from a Midwest Wind and Solar point of view. At the end of the day, what Midwest Wind and Solar does is offer turnkey solutions from a solar point of view. That means that we engineer, we buy materials, and ultimately we build systems. And certainly we service the systems as well as required. In terms of a brief overview of the topics that I'll be addressing here today, a little bit of an introduction in terms of who we are. Then really the bulk of my time will be devoted to what solar is and what it is not, for that matter. Talk a little bit about solar financing, the process that we as a company go through with our customers, and maybe share a few case studies, time permitting. So, Midwest Wind and Solar, we've been in business for just shy of 12 years. My business partner started the company really like so many entrepreneurs, focusing on residential applications. That over the last 4 to 5 years has transitioned to us no longer really focusing on the residential solar market, but being really dedicated to commercial customers. When I say commercials, that means schools, municipal, churches, and your for-profit type of businesses. We've done well over 100 locations throughout the Midwest. Certainly our main office here in Griffith, Northwest Indiana is our base, but we have people on the ground in Michigan, Illinois. We've done work in Minnesota, so we've quite a large geographical area that we cover. So as I said earlier, we are turnkey. That means that we do professional engineering in-house. We use obviously tier 1 brands, so A brands with the warranty systems that I'll get into later in this presentation. And one thing to note here is that, well, it's hard to believe, 5 years ago we were selected as the exclusive installation company for a program that was underwritten by the Department of Energy, program called Legalize, and that also ran in Valparaiso, Dyer, Gary, and Hobart. So it was a great program where we did a lot of education and ultimately installed solar in quite a few of those communities. That in terms of a quick introduction in terms of Midwest Wind and Solar. Get rid of this. First off here, you know, why solar? Well, that question is answered quite differently today from what it was when the company was founded. Back then, solar was, from a cost point of view, quite different from where it is today. I'll address that later in my presentation. But back then, it was very much focused on sustainability and the environment. Today, I would say that the bulk of our customers turn to us really focusing on, you know, how can I take control of my utility bill and how can I start saving some money. So it really is an economic discussion that we tend to have with our customers. Certainly there still are customers that from a sustainability point of view really are interested in solar and want to see the benefits. We've done about 45 school facilities in the past 3 years. And that also has come with curriculum opportunities, education that has very much come into the mix why people want to bring solar into a school facility. Now, before we really get into a conversation with a customer about solar, we always want to talk about you know, a bigger picture in terms of what else can be done. Quite often when we start looking at an energy load that a customer has, we first want to address, you know, what can we really offset before we even think about solar? Have you thought about LED? Have you thought about a more energy efficient HVAC system, etc.? So those are some of the early conversations that we engage in as we go into a real conversation about how can we deliver savings for an organization. So that's really at the outset of a conversation that we'd like to have with a customer. Next up, wanted to showcase here what, you know, solar looks like and the different components that we're dealing with here. On the left-hand side of this page, you see the solar module in the middle. The solar module is basically glass with in the middle the crystalline silicon cells that basically convert sunlight into electricity. In the back, the module is sealed off with a weatherable polyester, and that module has a junction box, and you have a solar module. Solar modules tied together, in this case on the top of a roof, is what we call a solar array. That then via a conduit gets tied into what we call an inverter, and that inverter turns the electricity into power that can be used at the facility. So basically taking it from what we call direct current into alternate current. You also see here a data acquisition system. That is fancy terminology for a monitoring system that allows us online to monitor the performance and the accuracy of the solar system. So that way we ensure that the system is performing up to its specifications and expectations. Certainly there is a utility grid component to it. In days that the facility doesn't use all the energy that is produced by the solar system, that energy will be pushed onto the grid here in Northwest Indiana. That means that it's going to NIPSCO and you're going to get credit for it. I'll briefly address that later into the presentation, but wanted to, in a pictorial here, really lay out the main components of a solar system. In this case, of course, it's on the roof. Very many systems also go on the ground, and sometimes in a parking lot via a car canopy system. Just to take what you saw in the prior picture into some words, I'll hit on a couple of notes here. So there's no water involved, there's no moving parts. It's the sunlight hitting these crystalline silicon cells that turning it into to energy. The technology, and I'll get into that later into the presentation, has been around for many years. The one other thing that I want to note here, you notice that I didn't talk about battery storage at all. I know that Zach is going to talk later in this workshop about storage. In our case today, the bulk of our installations do not have any backup storage as part of what we install. There's various reasons for that, but one of them is that the utility in many ways can offer, can function as a backup system by pushing energy onto the grid. So certainly we see the future, a tremendous growth for battery storage, but that is currently not the bread and butter what we do today. A couple of things that a lot of times come in Q&A sessions like these and workshops. You know, conventional wisdoms about solar, what it can and cannot do. You see here a bunch of examples in terms of sunlight here in the Midwest, that is too expensive, that is new technology, etc. I'm going to address a couple of these and happy to take more questions at the end of the presentation. This slide highlights Michigan, but Michigan, very similar statistics here for the state of Indiana. The point that I'm trying to make here is that is one, as you look at the amount of production that we can generate because of the sunlight here in the Midwest, it is tremendous. And really, when you look at the bottom of the country called Germany, Germany 10 years ago in many ways started the solar industry globally. And Germany has far less sunlight production compared to what we have here in the Midwest. So yes, if you just look at this data in terms of what the irradiance level is here in the Midwest, we're very solid. If you look at data that we are generating from real projects here in the Midwest, for instance, with the Tri-Creek School Corporation in Lowell, who has had multiple solar systems in place for 4 years, we're seeing that this type of independent data is tracking with actual data with customers that have installed solar. So yes, there's plenty of sun to turn it into real kilowatt hour production here in the Midwest. Well, maybe we have enough snow, but isn't that, maybe you have enough sun, but isn't it hampered by all the snow? Fortunately, the solar systems come at a pitched angle. That means that even on a roof, snow starts shedding off the solar panels, particularly with the black background, thermal heating. So therefore, we do not recommend taking snow off the solar panels. Ultimately, our proposals also factor in a certain amount of snow days during the year. So that's all very much part of our software calculations as we plan for what's in a particular geographic area. You can imagine if we do a system down in Indianapolis compared to the Upper Peninsula, we have very different snow loads, and that's all part of our calculations. So it's all factored in, and at the end of the day, it's turning into real kilowatt hour production estimates in our proposals. As I said in the opening part of this presentation, yes, 10, 15 years ago, solar was quite expensive, and it couldn't compete with conventional energy technologies. This slide shows the tremendous cost decline, up to 70% between 2010 and 2017. It's now to the point that the utilities are embracing solar as new technologies. Right here in our backyard with NIPSCO, they're mothballing various coal facilities and installing solar as replacement assets. So I think that's the biggest sign that the technology has now come down from a cost point of view, from a maintenance point of view, from an overall performance point of view. It's right there that utilities are moving forward with solar. So again, tremendous trajectory here in terms of cost. Yeah, while we drive around the Midwest, we still don't see that many solar systems. Having said that, if you are in different parts of the country, even in upstate New York, for many years, solar has been quite visible from the road as you drive around the state of New York. Bottom line is that the technology was invented in the late 50s and really came to commercial fruition in the 70s. Again, it needed that cost and scale improvement. So therefore, you're now starting to see larger deployments. The bottom line here is that it is proven and tested technology with appropriate warranty systems in place. When I say appropriate warranty systems in place, the solar modules that we use, our industry standards offers 25 years production guarantees. So again, when our customers invest in a solar system, they know that they have the peace of mind that the system will perform for 25 years. I think it is Zach that has more detail on net metering. I just want to point out that net metering is a vital component of a solar system. The ability to push energy onto the grid is something that is an integral component of any solar system that we install, where we do not deploy storage as a backup option. So again, I won't further steal Zach's thunder, but wanted to make sure that every proposal that we as Midwest deliver does incorporate net metering. When we deal with commercial projects, permitting and local requirements obviously are a critical component. So we make sure that as we turnkey our offering, that we talk to the local jurisdictions to really understand what is required, including code regulation, zoning regulation. Given the time constraints of this presentation, I won't go much deeper into that part, but again, that's all part of making sure that we offer a solution that takes care of every step along the way, including any permitting and zoning regulations that are out there in a particular community. In terms of financing, there's many different ways to finance solar projects. While certainly a capital investment is of course an option, quite often we help customers in terms of a lease option, in terms of a guaranteed energy savings option, working with the different partnerships that we have, or for that matter, an outright solar loan, where we also have different specialized finance companies that are very familiar with solar technology and therefore comfortable underwriting solar investments. So there's, dependent on the situation, a variety of options available, including tax credits that can be monetized via different finance solutions. And again, we model that all in the proposals that we bring to the table. In terms of the commercial process that we go through with our customers, very first conversation is typically about, what type of facility site are we dealing with? Are we going on the roof? Are we going on the ground? What are your needs? What ultimately are the objectives that we're trying to deliver against? Based on that initial conversation, getting electricity bill data from our customer, we start to do a deep dive analysis in terms of the electricity rates, what type of economic savings we can deliver. We then come out and do a presentation. We overlay that with different financing options. And ultimately, We then take that into, once we have a contract signed, we start dealing with interconnection with the utility, net metering. If we work on the roof, we integrate the roofer into our project team. There's a due diligence process from an engineering point of view, including structural, civil. I mentioned the entire permitting process. And when that is all buttoned down, then our crew comes out and actually installs the system. We train our customer on the monitoring. If there is an educational component, we of course roll that out, and that then allows us to flip the switch with utility and start delivering the savings and the benefits that the customer ultimately signed up for. Moving on to a couple of examples here. When we start in a board presentation, as I mentioned earlier, to present our case, we do that by noting where the array will be located. In this case, on the ground. In this case, on which section of the roof. We highlight how many panels, what type of production, and at the end of the day, we overlay that with so much kilowatt hours is what you have been buying from the utility. This is what you now will be self-producing. Hence, you're only purchasing a much smaller part. In this slide, the bottom left, you will only be purchasing 26% from the utility because you're almost producing up to 74% on your own roof. So trying to get very granular in terms of what a system looks like, where it is going to be located, and ultimately how that's turning into a certain amount of production. I have a couple of slides in terms of examples where we've built, and then I'm going to close out for questions. This is a school project in Bolingbrook, Illinois. This is a Dry Creek School project on the ground here in Lowell, in Northwest Indiana, that I mentioned. It's elementary school. This is in Michigan City, where at the high school we did a large project in the vacant parking lot. And this is a hybrid project in Westville, Northwest Indiana, where we had part of it on the ground and part of it on the roof. Jesse, I think that's almost my 15 minutes, and that really concludes the prepared presentation I had here.
Thanks so much, Mark. We do have one question that we'll pose to you, and then we'll have Zach on deck to be after you. And the question is from Walter, and Walter asks about the 25-year warranty and kind of spelling out whether that applies only to the actual technology or to the performance as well. And then the corollary question is, does the performance deteriorate over time? So if you would, yes, if you wouldn't mind closing out your PowerPoint, Mark, and allowing Zach to open up his, and then you can answer Walter's question, please.
Perfect. I closed out the presentation, so hopefully that allows Zach to get ready. Outstanding question. The 25-year power production guarantee specifically speaks to the solar module. And yes, that is a declining scale. The largest degradation of the solar cells happen in year 1. And then there is a set specification in terms of what year 2 through year 25 we'll see in terms of degradation of the performance of the module. It means that by year 25, the solar module manufacturer provides a warranty for 80% of the original output of the solar module will be in place by year 25. So yes, it is a declining scale by year stated in the warranty package.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark. And there will be other opportunities to ask Mark at the very end in about 35 minutes. So I will now introduce Zach Schock with Solar United Neighbors of Indiana. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you, Jesse, and thanks, Mark. My name is Zach Schalk. I am the Indiana Program Director for Solar United Neighbors, and I'll be talking to you over the next couple minutes about solar incentives and battery storage. So first, just a little bit of an introduction to Solar United Neighbors. We're a national 501c3 nonprofit organization and we're dedicated to helping Hoosiers go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And we primarily do that through a couple different ways, and one of those is what we call solar co-ops, and these are bulk purchase programs where we bring together neighbors and businesses in a given geographic area, help educate them about rooftop solar, and then help them leverage their bulk purchasing power through a competitive bidding process to get the best possible value out of a solar installation. The solar co-op process is totally free, but it does come with a free 1-year membership to Solar United Neighbors. We also have an individual membership program, either for folks who live outside of the geographic area of where our solar co-ops are, or who are looking to go on a faster timeline than what our solar co-ops generally offer. And that does come with an $85 annual membership fee, but we still help you identify some reputable installers in your area, help you compare the bids that you get from them, and ultimately help provide kind of vendor neutral technical support through the process. And another nice perk of being a Solar United Neighbors member is that if you are interested in financing as a Solar United Neighbors member, you would get access to the Clean Energy Credit Union as another option to explore financing. Right now we have solar co-ops open in Indianapolis, Boone County, and Hamilton County in central Indiana. And then just this week, we are excited to be launching our first solar co-op in Northwest Indiana, in Lake County, Porter County, and LaPorte County. So we're really excited about that. Since we launched our Indiana program last year, we've helped about a little more than 50 families go solar in Indianapolis, in Indiana, and helped to steer more than $1.5 million in direct investment through our solar co-ops. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to solarunitedneighbors.org/NWI to learn more and sign up for the free Northwest Indiana Solar Co-op. So over the next couple slides, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into net metering, which Mark mentioned earlier. I'm also going to talk about battery storage technology, and then finally we'll talk about tax considerations for your solar installation. So first, Mark already talked about net metering, but basically net metering is what allows for the flow of electricity to and from customers. And basically you get a 1-to-1 kilowatt hour swap for each kilowatt hour you produce and at the same value of a kilowatt hour you consume from the utility. So at the end of the month, you can calculate your monthly bill, setting aside any kind of fixed charges or taxes as the amount of electricity you used minus the amount of electricity you produced. And so I think the best way to really kind of understand how net metering works is, instead of me just saying a bunch of words to you, is to kind of see it visually. And so this is kind of two graphs showing solar production over the course of a day and over the course of a month, by month over the course of a year. That really allows you to see how net metering creates a solar offset. And so basically what you see here is the solar production in orange and your energy usage in blue. On a daily time frame, generally, your solar system is obviously producing when the sun is out. And at least back when we used to go to work every day, your energy usage would go down during the middle of the day while your panels are producing, creating more electricity than you need during the middle of the day for an average customer. And so over the course of the year, these excess kilowatt hours that you're producing, assuming your system is designed to cover up to 100% of your annual electricity needs, basically you're producing a bunch more in the summer months when the days are longer, there's more sunshine, than you are in the winter months when the days are shorter, or potentially when there's snow cover. And that offset that you create in the months with longer days allows you to build up credits on your bill that you can spin down in kind of the shoulder months on this graph when you aren't producing as much electricity. But it's a little bit more complicated than that here in Indiana, as you may be aware. In 2017, there was a law called SEA 309 that went into effect that essentially established a timeline for ending net metering, or at least the full retail rate that you receive through net metering right now. This law only applies to investor-owned utilities. So for instance, NIPSCO and I&M in the northern part of the state, or Duke. But basically what that law says is that net metering, as long as you, or net meter will be offered by those investor-owned utilities until no later than July 1 of 2022. And as long as you get your system installed before the utility ends net metering, you'll have full retail rate net metering until 2032. But net metering might actually end sooner than that July 1 cutoff, July 1, 2022 cutoff, depending on the utility. And actually the first utility in the state, Vectren down in Southwest Indiana, has already filed to end net metering for new solar customers. And they're actually seeking to end net metering as soon as January 1 of next year. Basically, systems installed after that deadline will not receive net metering at all. So after net metering ends, instead of getting the full one-to-one retail rate that net metering offers today, homeowners will be credited at the locational marginal price, or the wholesale rate, which is typically about a third of the retail cost, plus 25%. And I can't be more specific for you than that, because the process for actually establishing what that post-net metering rate will be at each individual utility, other than in Vectren, hasn't actually started yet. So this is what the law says, and we do anticipate that process to get going in all the other utilities soon. And in fact, SEA 309 requires all the other investor-owned utilities to start this process no later than March 1st of next year. And I think we'll be talking later in the presentation about ways that you can try to take action to make sure that we try to preserve net metering and a fair credit for excess solar production. So what happens when the power goes out is definitely a great question that a lot of solar owners want to know. And a lot of folks are surprised when they hear that for most installations, when the grid goes down, your solar will actually shut off. And that's really just a safety mechanism, because we don't want to be sending out any of that excess electricity onto the grid when somebody, a line worker, might be out there trying to fix the problem and get the grid back up and running. There are certain inverters that you can install to allow your system to island as if you had a generator. But for most folks, if you want to make sure you have power during an outage and that your solar continues to work during an outage, you'll want to look into battery storage. So how does storage work with solar? Basically, your solar will charge the batteries for later, and the grid can also charge the batteries depending on how your system is set up. Small amounts of energy will help keep the battery topped off so they stay in ready capacity. And the batteries will kick on automatically when the power is out. You can also test this by shutting off the breaker to your house. But basically the batteries will just automatically kick on whenever the grid is out. So batteries are still pretty expensive, especially compared to the rooftop solar, which we heard from Mark. The cost of solar has gone down significantly. Battery storage is starting to make a similar transition, but it still probably will only make the most sense for you if you are somewhere that has frequent utility outages, or you have critical loads at home that you want to make sure don't get impacted by a power outage. So that was just a very quick overview. If you want to learn more, we have a free guide that you can download at solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And I see that my time is running low, so I'm going to skip this next slide. This kind of just gives an overview of what you might be able to cover with a battery system, if that's something you're interested in. The key takeaway is it's economically very difficult and technologically difficult to cover your entire home with a battery system today. So you'll have to think about what you would really want to cover in an emergency situation where you needed your battery. So just real quick, I did want to cover some tax considerations. So here in Indiana, we do have a property tax exemption for a solar investment. So basically, if you install solar on your home, even though it should increase your property value, it will not increase your tax bill. There's some paperwork that you can file to make sure you get that, that exemption on your taxes. You also want to consider the federal investment tax credit, which today is 26%. It's a non-refundable credit, but you can extend that over 5 years if that's something that is appropriate for you. And battery storage costs can be included and can be included in that tax credit as long as the system is charged with your solar. And I do have a quick slide next about the tax credit stepping down. But finally, if you're a business, you can use accelerated depreciation to deduct up to 85% of the qualified solar equipment over a 5-year period to help you get to payback even sooner. And so just real quick, the federal investment tax credit is scheduled to step down to 22% next year. And so conservatively, if you want to get the 26% tax credit, you should make sure to install your system by the end of this calendar year. And it's scheduled to actually go away entirely in 2022 for residential systems, though it will stay at 10% for commercial systems under current law. All right, and that is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks very much, Zach. And if you wouldn't mind closing out, and we'll allow Lori to then queue up her presentation. And again, if you have questions for Zach, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A general chat box, and we'll be sure to ask him when we are done with the presentations. So welcome to Lori Cagle, who is the Communications Director for South Shore Clean Cities. Hello, Lori.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of the attendees. We appreciate you taking time during what for many is your busy lunch hour. So I am Lori Cagle. I am the Communications Director for South Shore Clean Cities. We are headquartered in St. John, Indiana, here in Lake County. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization managed by Legacy Environmental Services, which is an Indiana certified women business enterprise. We're very proud of that designation. We celebrated our 20th anniversary last year, and we are one of nearly 100 U.S. Department of Energy Clean Cities coalitions across the country. So what is a Clean Cities Coalition? We are basically an organization that promotes sustainable transportation and its methodologies that support it. So alternative fuels, alternative fuel vehicles, electric charging stations, etc. Why do we do this? Multiple reasons. Doing so helps promote domestic fuels, strengthens our nation's energy security, reduces dependence on imported oil, supports local jobs and the local economy, and it also helps the environment and with clean air. So how do we do it? With partnerships. And it occurred to me that perhaps this should be an elbow bump animation, so maybe I need to work on that a little bit more. But we do partner with, we're a member-based organization, as I mentioned, and through the members that we have, we work with them together to create partnerships to put these kinds of programs into place to advance the adoption of sustainable transportation technologies. So why is the organization that cares about sustainable transportation talking to you today when this is a solar webinar? So there's Mark Van Dongen there on the right, who you heard from earlier with Midwest Wind and Solar. Clean energy and renewables are also part of this process. And we work very closely with our members and partners, including Mark at Midwest Wind and Solar, to help implement these things. Many of those school projects were ones that we worked with Mark on, and he is a valuable member. So where do these two things connect? What is the intersection of sustainable transportation and clean energy? There's many different opportunities for those two to combine. For us, sustainable transportation and clean energy tends to come together with the marriage of electric vehicles. And I'm going to explain how that works and why that is. So you're hearing a lot more about electric vehicles right now. Currently, they comprise only about 2% of all passenger vehicles sold in the United States, but that number is growing exponentially by leaps and bounds. Just in 2008, the US surpassed a benchmark of 1 million electric vehicles sold, and those sales are growing by about 81% year over year. Bloomberg News is predicting that electric vehicles are going to outsell gasoline-fueled vehicles by 2040. 2040 is not that far away anymore, so we know it's coming. So automakers know this. This isn't just data that they're looking at and not believing in. They are making huge investments. Remember the Super Bowl? Doesn't it seem like a long time ago? So Super Bowl 2020 featured $33.6 million in electric vehicle commercials. That's a huge investment. 4 of the 7 commercials for automakers were for electric vehicles, and were seen by an audience of 100 million. And they featured celebrity pitchmen like LeBron James, Idris Elba. They do not come at a small price tag. Why are they making these investments? Because the automakers know that these projections are accurate, and they're making production plans and investments accordingly. So here's where we're going to get into a little bit more about the sustainable energy options and how they meld with electric vehicles. So in terms of the on-road emissions, electric vehicles produce 0 on-road emissions and far fewer greenhouse gas emissions than traditional gas vehicles, even when they're charged on a coal-fueled grid. So you can see here in this chart, a gasoline vehicle, the kinds of greenhouse gas emissions that they produce versus an electric vehicle charged on the grid, far, far less. That's a myth. People often will say, well, wait a minute, if you're charging your electric vehicle and it's coal-powered grid, aren't you still producing greenhouse gas emissions? You are, but when compared to gasoline vehicles, they're far fewer. But look what happens when you add renewables like solar to the mix. That's when you start to get a truly closed loop, near zero emission electric vehicle experience. And that's what we're talking about here today. So where do we see some solar charged electric vehicles in action? Right here in Indiana. Clay Terrace is a upscale shopping center down in Carmel, Indiana. They installed a solar canopy in 2013 through a partnership there, and they use a solar canopy for this. So what that does is create kind of a almost a carport. So it provides some shelter for the vehicles. That shelter is created by the solar panels, and then you have your electric vehicle charging below it. It's just a great example of destination charging that also supports local economy, because when people are stopping to charge, they're going to charge for a short period of time. They're going to go into the shopping center, spend a little money, get a bite to eat, etc. In other parts of the country, Bounce Milwaukee, this was a great project up in Milwaukee. Bounce Milwaukee is kind of an indoor bouncy house, fun place to bring your kids. And they also have pizza that you can get there, but also have a delivery service for their pizza. And a few years ago, they installed solar on the roof and made all of their pizza operations completely solar powered, including the charging of their delivery vehicle, which is an electric Nissan Leaf. So they like to tout that they have solar powered pizza, which I think is kind of cool. Also the city of Madison, also in Wisconsin, they have solar electric vehicle charging for their city fleet. It's right there on the street, as you can see here, and it's a nice visible demonstration of the city's commitment to reducing its carbon footprint. It also helps with energy resiliency in case of emergency. The Department of Energy defines energy resiliency as just that, the ability to withstand emergency situations like natural disasters. If we were to not have access to our gasoline or diesel, they would still be able to fuel their vehicles, or not fuel, but charge their vehicles and move on. Well, that's nice, Lori, but what about the personal electric vehicle owner? Well, the reality is most of them charge their vehicles overnight in their own garages at home, not unlike you would do with your cell phone. Come in, plug it in, use it in the morning, it's ready to go. And then the public electric vehicle charging stations, that's kind of the equivalent of capping off your range or your electric vehicle charge with those public stations. But what happens if you live in an apartment or a condominium complex and you don't have a garage? You might even not have a parking space, or just might have on-street parking. How would they be able to charge their electric vehicles? Well, the Department of Energy is thinking about that. We are part of a grant-funded program from the Department of Energy that began in 2019 called, and it's a mouthful, it's the Vehicle Charging Innovations for Multi-Unit Dwellings, or VCI MUD project. This project is aiming to do just that, to address challenges and barriers to electric vehicle charging at multi-unit dwellings. Take a look at the picture here and look how they're handling this in this very nice looking, I'm assuming, condo or apartment here. They have solar power not only for charging their vehicles, but also on the building. So this project, we, South Shore Clean Cities, are one of 13 Clean Cities coalitions across the country participating in this project. And you can see some of the other organizations here, as well as electric utilities, electric vehicle charging providers, multi-unit dwelling property owners, state and local government agencies, et cetera. So the goals of the project are really to engage stakeholders to find where these barriers are to curbside charging, multi-unit dwelling charging, to have some demonstrations with some technologies to help address those barriers. Notice it says innovative technologies. We're getting back to solar soon. Also to compile these findings in a roadmap to help accelerate the adoption of electric vehicle charging for multi-unit dwellings, and to disseminate these tool kits nationwide to help people get past some of these issues that they might have. So again, that's where clean energy comes into play. These types of locations where you have multi-unit dwellings, where you have apartment complexes, are a great opportunity for using these solar canopies. You get this kind of carport experience, allow for solar energy for your charging, and provide an option for your residents. So what do you do if you're interested in this? What if you're a resident of an apartment complex or a condominium complex, or you're a property owner of one? How do you know if this is right for you? Well, start that conversation. Talk to the neighbors in your building, in your complex, engage in interest. If you're a property owner, ask if your tenants may be interested in purchasing an electric vehicle in the next 18 months or so, and if they'd be interested in some charging options there. You can also work with your property managers in your area and help educate them on the multiple benefits. What if none of these are an option for you right now? Well, NIPSCO does have a green power project that allows their customers to purchase electricity from renewable sources for a monthly fee. They can choose a percentage of their power that is designated to come from renewables like solar, and then NIPSCO will purchase renewable energy credits on your behalf. You keep getting your electricity bill from NIPSCO, and purchase those renewable energy credits supports renewable production of electricity here in Midwestern states. If you're interested in getting involved, the partners on this VCI MUD project, that multi-unit dwelling project, including South Shore Clean Cities, are working to collect data for these multi-unit dwelling and residential curbside charging stations to get a sense of who might be interested, and we're also seeking demonstration project locations. You can also contact South Shore Clean Cities to learn how we can help with your sustainability and sustainable transportation and clean energy needs. I do feel it's necessary to mention that we are nonpartisan, we don't lobby, we're also fuel and energy neutral. We don't promote one methodology over another, and the reason for that is one size really doesn't fit all. So one method might not be best for you personally, or for your company, for your organization, or your fleet, but we have those contacts and those connections to work with you to figure out how to kind of put all these puzzle pieces together. I thank you for your time, and feel free to contact me and anybody in our organization if you have any questions. And as I mentioned, Mark Van Dongen is a partner and is a wonderful resource if you're interested in looking into solar any further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. And I think we're at the cusp of this electric vehicle revolution, and so your presentation is very timely. So thank you for it. We appreciate the questions that have come in, and I've taken those. And now we are going to move on to the next presentation, which will actually be by me. Okay, so the last few presentations have been very focused on um, looking at rooftop solar from a project level perspective, whether that's a home or a business or a school or place of worship. What I want to do is take us to a 10,000 foot level and think about rooftop solar from the perspective of public policy. How do we make rooftop solar more affordable and accessible in Indiana? And I think public policy matters for two core reasons. One is that we want to make solar more accessible and more affordable for Hoosiers. We want solar energy to become commonplace across Indiana, again, whether it's a home or a business or a place of worship. We also want Indiana to be a hub for solar energy jobs. So let's talk about that issue about Indiana as a potential hub for solar energy jobs. If you look at this map, this reflects per capita income in Indiana by county. And the lighter the color, the lower the average income is in that county. And what's striking is that some of the best counties that are prime for investment in renewable energy are exactly the counties that are actually economically struggling. And the great news is that renewable energy is growing very rapidly. In fact, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, solar and wind jobs are projected to be the fastest growing professions in the United States until at least 2026. Unfortunately, Indiana does not rank in the top 10 in terms of solar jobs or energy efficiency jobs, according to the World Resources Institute. Now, the good news is that utility scale solar is taking its place within Indiana's electricity mix in a big way. The largest solar farm at an airport in North America is here in Indiana. It's at the Indianapolis International Airport. The largest solar farm on an athletic facility in the entire world is also in Indiana. It happens to be right next to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And Indiana is in the cusp of building two 200 megawatt solar farms, the kind of farms that are at the scale that they could literally help to power tens of thousands of homes. But Indiana has a very specific challenge, and that has to do with rooftop solar. So there's a lot of great entrepreneurs like Mark out there that are helping to accelerate the expansion of rooftop solar, supported by great nonprofits like Zach's Solar United Neighbors. But the fact of the matter is that the policy climate has actually gotten more challenging rather than less challenging in Indiana. And of course, Mark and Zach have both talked about net metering. The problem is that Indiana became the first state in the United States through the legislative process to phase out net metering, whereby anyone who wants to install solar in Indiana after July 1st, 2022 will no longer be eligible to have their system net metered if they install on or after July 1st, 2022. And as Zach mentioned, there's the caveat there that in some utility service territories, it's actually going to be an earlier date than July 1st, 2022. So as you can see from this map, the vast majority of states have net metering still. Only a few are in the process of phasing it out. So what I want to do is talk very briefly about 3 opportunities to advance customer-owned and community-owned solar in Indiana. Let's suppose you face some kind of constraint. Maybe it's a technical one, which you've got an old rooftop and you don't have the money to put up a new rooftop to support solar panels. Or you've got great mature trees that shade out your rooftop and you, of course, don't want to cut those trees. Or perhaps it's a financial constraint. You don't have cash or you're not willing to take out a loan. Or maybe it's a legal constraint where you live in a homeowners association which prohibits rooftop solar. In any of those cases, one solution to that is something called community solar. And the basic concept is that solar is not sited on your property, whether it's a home or a business or a place of worship. Rather, it's sited on some kind of other resource. Maybe it is an abandoned lot in a nearby area. Maybe it's on a piece of church property that isn't going to be used for any purpose, or a piece of park property that's not going to be used for any purpose. A solar project developer builds a solar project using his or her own capital to build that project, and then a variety of different property owners buy shares in that community farm. And to the extent that they are buying shares from that solar farm, they can get credit from the electric utility to the extent that, again, they are buying shares from that solar farm. And that, you may hear the term virtual net metering, that is this type of concept of community solar, which again is collectively owned by a variety of different users. Unfortunately, Indiana does not allow third-party community solar. There are a couple of utilities in the state, both rural electric co-ops as well as investor-owned utilities, that have piloted community solar, but the project is owned by the utility as opposed to a third party, like a solar installer, like a company like Midwest Wind and Solar. Some of the beneficiaries of community solar would be commercial tenants, multifamily housing, of course, where you can't necessarily individually own your solar panels because you're a renter, or homeowners for whom solar is not within reach for the reasons that I discussed. There's almost 400,000 homes in Indiana that are effectively being powered by community solar. And there's about another 685,000 homes over the next 5 years that are likely to be powered by community solar. Right now, about 40 states have community solar pilot projects, but only about 20 states have legislation in place related to community solar. We'd like Indiana to join that list of 20. An example of how this works in practice is there's a church in Minnesota, Westminster Presbyterian Church. They contracted with a company called Renesolar Power. Renesolar Power in turn leased land from a monoculture farmer, and it turned out redeveloped that land that they leased from the farmer and made it into a pollinator-friendly solar farm. And the members of this congregation of Westminster Presbyterian Church bought shares in that solar farm. And ultimately, it saved the church about $1 million over the life of the contract with Renesolar Power. Now let's suppose you face another type of constraint, a financial one, where you don't have the cash and you don't want to take out another loan on your home. This is where something called third-party financing would be a great benefit for these types of Hoosiers. So basically, on your left, you see a situation where there's no solar in the picture. This is your utility bill. This is how much you might be paying hypothetically for your electricity per month. Now, in one concept of third-party financing, you have something called solar leasing, where a project developer puts solar panels on your rooftop, or maybe they're ground-mounted, and you pay a flat fee per month for all of the electrons that are generated by those solar panels. Another concept is called a solar PPA, or solar power purchase agreement. And there you're paying for the you're having a project developer put up the solar, no cost of your own, but you're paying that solar developer for every kilowatt hour, every electron that you are getting from those panels. So that's a per unit cost, whereas a solar lease is a flat cost per month, regardless of how many units of electricity you get from those panels. Again, this type of policy is not legal in Indiana. That's something we want to change. Some of the people that would benefit it would be municipalities, small businesses, and homes. When it is in place, when it is legal, it has proven to be an enormously powerful vehicle for getting a lot of people to go solar. In New Jersey, 83% of solar residential project owners use third-party solar. In Colorado, it's 95% of non-residential solar customers. We've got about 30 states that have third-party financing in place. And just for lack of time, I'll skip this, would be happy to give a case study there. The third type of policy concept I want to plant the seeds for talking to you about is, suppose you again face a financial constraint of not having cash or not wanting to take out a loan, and maybe you have a logistical constraint, which is you don't know how long you're going to own the property, so you're hesitant to make an investment in solar energy because you don't know if you're going to get a full payoff of the system, because you just don't know how much you're going to own the piece of property. This is where something called PACE financing comes into place. This is legislation that is authorized at the state level, and then a city or county adopts an ordinance that then allows a city or county to issue a bond. and the proceeds of the bond sale are then used to give low interest loans, generally speaking to small businesses, but sometimes to medium and large sized businesses, such that they can pay back their loan for this clean energy improvement as a lien on their property tax bill, as opposed to a loan. So it travels with the property, not with the property owner. And therefore you don't have to worry about the payback period, because the balance of the lien is going to be paid by the future property owner. This type of public policy has had enormous benefits for investment and jobs in America, and more than 37 states have passed it. As you can tell from this map, Indiana is the only state in the upper Midwest which does not have PACE financing on the books. And again, I'll skip on this case study, but would be happy to answer any questions. I want to top line the fact that in addition to these 3 public policies, which will take a few years to pass, there are other public policies that are under consideration in the General Assembly, like the idea of streamlining regulations with regard to solar in homeowner association areas, or revisiting the law that Zach talked about called SCA 309 or SB 309. And again, we can talk more about that in the Q&A. I want to also make our audience aware of the fact that we are underway with something called the 21st Century Task Force, which is going to produce some recommendations for the General Assembly to consider with respect to energy policy. So with that, I will hand this off to Amanda Shepard to talk about how you can best talk to your lawmaker, and then we'll have a Q&A session.
Thanks, Jesse. I'm gonna get this up here. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about engaging your state representative and your state senator. If I can get this to screen share here. There we go. Okay, so one of the big things as we wrap all of this up is obviously we want as many people as possible to be able to go solar. And so the very important step that I'm going to talk about is talking to your lawmakers in order to make solar energy more affordable and more accessible. So number one, whoops, went too far. Number one is to, if you don't already have them saved, find and save your lawmaker's email and their phone number. If you don't have this information, you can go to the website that's shown on the bottom here. So it's bit.ly/INLegis. And just a note that you do have to capitalize the I, N, and L in this. And it will take you to the Indiana General Assembly website. And here you will put in your address with city and zip code, and it will actually pop up your legislator's information for you so that you can find their contact information. It will pull up your representative, your senator at the state level. It will also tell you who your federal lawmakers are as well, so that way you have access to that too. Once you have that, please save that in your contacts. I am having trouble advancing my slide here, I think because I keep trying to admit people as they're coming in, so apologies. All right, the second thing I wanted to note for you is to be sure to follow our website, particularly our Bill Watch page. This is where we put all that's happening in the State House. So when bills are being introduced, when they're moving through the General Assembly, we will update this website. Right now, it's still Bill Watch 2020. We will be updating that for Bill Watch 2021 once we get a little closer to the 2021 legislative session. But this is a really great place for you to get updated on what's happening with the bills that we are watching and to find out how to take action on those bills. The third thing is to meet your lawmaker. Now, I know we are still very much in a pandemic. So if you are wanting to meet your lawmaker, which we highly recommend before the legislative session, you could do that via Zoom or some other video conferencing capability. So reach out to your lawmaker, ask them to set up a time to meet with you via Zoom if possible. And if you can, make a commitment to meet them between Election Day, because of course, from now until Election Day, they're all very likely going to be busy with the election cycle. But between Election Day and Thanksgiving is really the time when you should be able to get them to, quote, sit down with you and take time. Of course, after Thanksgiving, then we get into the holiday season. And so it gets a little more difficult to kind of pin them down at that point. But if you do it between those times, then it's a really good opportunity for you to get to know them. You can meet during the legislative session, so that starts in January, but they will be especially distracted this year, of course, one, with COVID-related changes, so uncertainties regarding where exactly all of the meetings will be held. There are some thoughts that they might be held in places other than just directly in the State House. And they also are going to be doing some budget choices this year, which are pretty much unprecedented, I would say. There are going to be some very difficult decisions for them to be making as we are all still dealing with this new normal. So highly recommend you to do it between Thanksgiving or between Election Day and Thanksgiving. Number 4 is to focus on the relationship, not the policy. So when we ask you to meet your lawmakers, in this particular instance, what we want you to do is to really build up a relationship with them and to get to know them as a person. Make sure you prepare in advance. So if you need notes or whatever, since you're probably going to be doing it via Zoom, then you can have those right there with you. Have your message very clearly in your mind, so that way you know exactly what it is that you're wanting to cover with them. And the next point is to be assertive, and what we mean by that is to make sure that you stay on topic as much as possible. Don't let them kind of sideline you in what you're wanting to get across, but we also want you to be very courteous to them, otherwise they will shut down. They're human just like the rest of us, so of course they're going to respond the same way that you would when talking with somebody. Give them a one-page summary when you're done. So as you're wrapping up your meeting, make sure that you have kind of a page as a PDF or some other document that you can email over to them. So that way they have that at their disposal, and that way you really make sure that you have gotten all of those points across as much as possible. And then finally, share what you learned. So this website or this email here, energy@hecweb.org, let us know what you find out when you meet with them. What did they say? Did they seem receptive to your point of view? Did you learn something that might help us in doing our own outreach and lobbying with this particular lawmaker? So be sure to let us know how it goes. And one other point I want to make is if you need help with preparing message points before the meeting, please reach out to us because we are happy to help with that at any time. Okay, the next thing is to write letters to the editor. So this is kind of the next step you can take. So you can write a letter to the editor of your local paper anytime. It's a great way to make a difference and to kind of spread the word to a larger audience. When you are writing a letter to the editor, there are some tips here. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're running out of time at this point, but make sure you look up your newspaper submission guidelines. That's the #1 thing I would say to do. And then if you need more help getting started, contact me and I will be glad to help you. Host virtual phone banks. So normally we would ask you to host phone banks in person. Of course, that's a little different right now. We're not encouraging any in-person events at this time. So this is a really great way to get even more involved and to help contact people who live in particular legislative districts about issues that you care about. We provide all the information that you need. I should have taken off, you have to find a location, because you don't. You can just do it right from your home, from your computer. Okay, so I wanted to make this as short as possible. So any of those things that I just talked about, if you need help getting started, if you are not comfortable reaching out to your lawmaker yet, or even engaging with other people in your community, I am happy to help you in whatever way I can. My email is here. You can feel free to reach out at any time, and I would be more than happy to assist you. finally, you are invited to GTS 2020. So our annual forum, Greeting the State House, is coming up November 20th and 21st this year. It is all virtual via the Hopin platform. It is a day and basically a half this year of lots of really great info, and we would love for you to join us. So you can go to hecweb.org/GTS to learn more and to register. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jesse for questions.
All right, thank you, Amanda. And we do have some great questions that have been posed by our audience. The first question is for Mark, and this is, what would be some ideal types of roofing that are solar friendly? I know you work in the commercial and institutional space, but I hope you can speak to this for the residential side as well. What's kind of an optimal type of roof for accommodating solar?
Yeah, the optimal roof is a flat roof. That's really ideal, both from a safety installation point of view. Having said that, when you look at residential type of roofs, you know, I would say that the most important criteria with a roof is that it is a roof that is relatively new, where obviously there's no leaks. And there's appropriate trusses in place to adhere into. If those criteria are there, then it's pretty straightforward to work on residential roofs. Obviously, the steeper it gets, you know, you start thinking about safety considerations. And in the past, when we used to do residential installations, we certainly were not shy bringing a professional roofer if it was too steep and we needed trained roofers on a very steep roof. So I would say that those are some of the considerations when we think about the complexity of a roof system.
I appreciate that, Mark. Next question is for Zach, and that is really if you could give us a rough sense of what a residential solar plus battery system would cost.
Sure, happy to answer that. So first, there are a lot of considerations that go into the cost of both solar installation and battery storage. So there's really no one size fits all for this question. I will say that kind of in our experience, you can expect in a residential installation for before any tax considerations to expect somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. You know, depending on how much of your energy you're trying to offset, what type of load you have at the home, and that's just for the solar panels themselves. And again, you can take this year 26% tax credit off the top of that. And you know, I know that sounds like a big number, but you also want to consider that this is going to be an asset generating electricity for you for at least 25 years, and think about it in the context of the electric bills that you would be paying over the course of that lifetime of the system, which the rates continue to go up, up, and up. So the investment in rooftop solar is a way to bundle those payments together, and turn it into an asset that will generate a return so you can hedge against future electric bill payments and an increase in electric rates. The battery storage part of that is also, you know, fairly complex. It depends on how many loads you're trying to cover on your home. What are the critical, you know, or do you just want a battery that can cover an outlet so you can charge your phone in the case of a long outage? Are you trying to cover, you know, a refrigerator and multiple lights and just more potential demand? And how long do you want that battery to be able to last? So there are a lot of considerations there. But what we see is that you should expect at least $10,000 in the installed cost for a battery system, and more realistically, probably between 11 and 15,000, but it can very easily go up into the $20,000 range depending on all of the details that you're looking at on your battery system. So batteries are definitely still on the pricey side, especially considering the amount of use that you'll likely get out of the battery system.
All right, thank you, Zach. And we welcome more questions from you. We have an eye on the clock, but we also know that this is a rare opportunity to have some time with some real experts on rooftop solar. So the next question is for Mark, and that is, and you've touched upon this somewhat in your presentation, but I think the gentleman here would like a little bit more detail. how do solar systems hold up in the face of hail, wind, and storms? And if there is damage, who would pay that for that repair of the solar panel? And we want to make sure, Mark, you're not on mute by accident.
Sorry, I just came off mute and I missed the question. My apology, Jesse. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. It is first, if you could elaborate about how solar holds up in the midst of hail, wind, and storms. And secondly, who would pay for damage if there is some kind of natural harm to the system? Would that be borne by an insurance policy or by the homeowner or by the installer?
Yep. Sorry for the repeat of the question. Yes, correct on the last part. We've had a tornado hit a year and a half ago at one of our school projects, and that was indeed covered by insurance. In terms of the prior part of the question, hail is up to 2 inch, and it depends a little bit on the angle of the solar panel, but that's part of the warranty of the solar panel. So we hardly see any issue with hail. What we do see again, with tornadoes, that's of course something you cannot protect against. But in terms of wind studies, particularly when we go on roofs, again, part of the structural engineering is that we do due diligence in terms of wind load calculations and how that impacts the solar array. So that's all part of the upfront work that takes place in terms of engineering.
All right, thank you, Mark. And the final question we have here, and this is also a final opportunity to everybody to ask a question for now, is for Zach, and that is just to know, is there a certain co-op size that you're that's sort of optimal for the new one in Northwest Indiana to thrive?
Great question. We like to aim for anywhere between 50 and 100 folks, but really the key size that we're going for is to get enough members in the co-op to be able to host what we call a selection committee. So that's the group of volunteers from co-op members who will actually join us to review the competitive bids that we get from installers, and the co-op members themselves will actually select the installer. So we generally wait until we have between 20 and 30 members in the co-op before issuing our request for proposal, so that we know we have enough members of the co-op to be able to host a selection committee and make sure that those co-op members are driving the process of selecting the single installer that will work with the whole group. Then once the group continues to grow, we basically work with the installer to figure out how many co-op members they can handle and still provide the same level of service for everybody. So here in Indiana, we've had co-ops that are anywhere between 40 to 50 on the small end and up well over 100 on the larger end.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that. And that was the final question that was asked. I just have just two final wrap-up slides. We're really, again, so appreciative of all of you participating in this workshop. We're grateful to all of our panelists once again, Mark, Zach, Lori, Amanda. In terms of staying connected with this workshop, we have a general email for that, which Amanda has mentioned, which is energy@hecweb.org. And there are some really good resources related to accelerating rooftop solar in Indiana at hecweb.org/solar. And as Amanda mentioned, we have our Greening the State House event coming up on November 20th and 21st. And we will have a discussion with some great experts on clean energy policy for people who are interested. I should also mention that tomorrow, Hoosier Environmental Council is hosting on our Facebook page, facebook.com/HECWeb, a roundtable where the policy directors of HEC will be talking about how to prep you for the election. We've been really talking about the 2021 session, but here what we're talking about is how you can talk confidently with candidates for office about environmental issues and feel really confident to do so. So you'll be getting an email from us likely next week with a link to the recording today, how to stay in touch with HEC as well as our speakers. I've mentioned the upcoming events. We truly hope you'll register for Green the State House at hecweb.org/GTS. We'll be giving some more detail about the Northwest Indiana Solar Co-op that Zach mentioned, that Solar United Neighbors launched this week. And for those who are interested in getting a certificate of completion, maybe because you're a student or you have some kind of professional certification to kind of justify your time on this Lunch and Learn, we're happy to send you a certificate of completion. And with that, I'm really grateful once again for your participating in this workshop. And again, if you reach us at energy@hecweb.org, we would be happy to not only facilitate questions you may have for the speakers, but also we would love to hear your feedback about how this workshop went and what we can do better. So thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead.